An increase in the supply of eggs has placed downward pressure on retail prices. Now, it's good news for price-conscious consumers heading into Easter weekend. Joining us now is American Farm Bureau economist Michael Nepveux. Thanks for joining us, Michael. Now, the upcoming Easter holiday has many people thinking about eggs. Let's start with an update on the current U.S. egg market.
Sure. So in 2018, the U.S. produced nearly 110 billion eggs. Now, the vast majority of this, about 90% of it, goes to table egg production, which is what we eat every day. The remaining part of that goes to hatchery-type production. Now, that's replenishing the layer flock and providing birds for the broiler industry as well.
How does Easter typically impact egg demand and egg prices in turn?
Well, the holiday weekend is usually a pretty good demand event for egg disappearance. Typically, moving into it, you do see an increase in the consumption of eggs. Now, for 2019, that may not be the case as much as last year. So USDA is actually anticipating that the average U.S. household will consume about 5 eggs. Now, that's down 2.5 eggs per person from last year.
Wow, that's interesting. Now, you mentioned wholesale prices. Let's talk a little bit about retail prices that the consumer actually pays at the supermarket. How do they currently look?
Well, retail prices actually have seen some support in recent months, especially when you compare it back to the supply gut that we saw back in 2016 and 2017. But it also depends on what type of retail egg you're talking about. So your conventional eggs for 2018 averaged about $1.25 per dozen. Now, cage-free, omega-3, and vegetable-fed eggs, that was about double that in the $2.50 range. And by far, the most expensive is organic at about $4 a dozen.
Do you have any insight as to where the egg market could go after we get through this holiday weekend?
Well, typically what you see right after Easter is a decline in the price of eggs. But even this year, going into the Easter weekend, we actually have seen a decline in prices beforehand. So with the supply outpacing demand, I would expect that we'll probably continue to see some decline in egg prices. When
it comes to cage-free and these organic trends that we've been noticing, is there an uptick in those sales versus conventional eggs?
You know, we have seen a little bit of an increase in cage-free. Several years ago, all the U.S. companies pledged to be cage-free by, usually, most of them said 2025. Whether or not they're going to get there is a whole other question, but for food service type industries, they could probably get there.
All right, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much for joining us. AFBF economist Michael Nepveux, happy Easter.